This event would not be made possible without the support of our sponsors. So thank you to our exclusive presenting sponsor, Port of Portland, our supporting sponsors, Northwest Natural and PGE, and our energy break sponsor, Epson. I would now like to introduce the Port of Portland's environmental specialist, Erin Anderson, who's going to share a brief overview of the Port initiatives around food waste reduction and other sustainability related programs. And then she will introduce our first presenter. Take it away, Erin.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, so we'll see if I can stumble through this. You'd think after 2 years would be better, but there we go. There we go. So good morning. I'm Erin Anderson with the Port of Portland, environmental specialist. My focus with the Port is basically all things waste related. So I do the hazardous waste as well as the solid waste. I do a little bit of the asbestos and building materials, but I'll be honest with you, garbage is where my heart is at. And I really enjoy all of the waste components of this. So quick introduction for the Port of Portland. For those who aren't familiar, the Port kind of has 4 areas that we focus on. With our connection in Washington County, we have Hillsborough Airport. We also manage Troutdale Airport. We have various marine terminals, both on the Columbia as well as the Willamette. We also have quite a few industrial park areas, whether that is Amazon fulfillment centers, or this one pictured here is one that we really like to show. It's our Troutdale Reynolds Industrial Park, where we did a lot of remediation from a former Reynolds industrial facility. And then what you are likely most familiar with us is for Portland International Airport. And that's what I'll kind of talk a little bit today about. This picture on the bottom, if you've flown through PDX recently, or if you plan to in the next couple of years, it's a bit of a mess right now. We are in the midst of a very large construction project, essentially redoing the middle of our airport to make it seismically sound, as well as increase capacity for future passengers. So this picture on the bottom shows the new roof structure in the new area that if you come back in 2025, you'll be able to experience. So quick little bit about most of what I'm going to focus on is PDX and kind of our food waste journey that applies to what you'll learn later today, but really it's I'm more excited to learn what all of you guys are working on. The PDX, we started composting out here with our 30 or so restaurants, early 2000s, before there was a lot of programs in the region. We kind of started with just a quick keep the food waste out of the landfill, which then as our program developed, went more focused on keeping the food waste out of the landfill to now donating any excess food that is still edible. We partner with Urban Gleaners to get prepackaged food from our restaurants directly to those who need it. Recently, we've really been focusing on how to reduce wasted food to begin with, working with our restaurants to really see which kitchen practices, best practices can not only reduce food waste, but also save them money. And then now we're transitioning into looking at how we can additionally reduce waste by focusing on a durable dish program for some of our food courts. This program, we found, not only reduces the packaging waste with the clamshells and other to-go containers, but our restaurants have found additional benefits with being able to reduce how much food they're putting into the clamshells, being able to properly display it, as well as saving them some money. So most of our programs, like I said, it's focused here at PDX, but our restaurants range, I think we have about 36 local restaurants right now, and they're everything from national chains to local chains that are actually, a lot of them have an airport location as well as a street side location. And so very similar challenges to what all of you restaurants are facing. You'll see with our food donation and Green Plate, unfortunately, COVID has kind of put those programs temporarily on hold. COVID and construction, we're hoping now things are getting a little bit more back to normal. So we're hoping we can bring back those programs as well. That's kind of all I had. I'll switch now. Let's see if I can stop sharing this and then introduce Elaine, who I'm very excited to hear about. Elaine, if you want to start sharing your screen for this. So Elaine Blatt with Oregon DEQ, Department of Environmental Quality, is a senior policy analyst. Her primary focus is on sustainable consumption and production of materials, and she led development of DEQ strategy for preventing the wasting of food. She led market research designed to inform development of values-based messaging and to encourage Oregonians to reduce wasted food. She also represents Oregon in the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment to promote food waste reduction among grocers and develop outreach on food waste prevention for food service businesses. Prior to joining DEQ, Elaine worked on a variety of projects related to sustainable production and consumption, energy efficiency, and supply chain management. Please welcome Elaine.
Unmute myself. And I'm going to just briefly stop sharing my screen because I'm having a little trouble moving into slideshow mode here. Yikes. Sorry about the technical difficulties.
No worries.
Let me just give it a go again. Where am I? There we are. Does anyone, I'm going to ask for technical assistance. My problem is that I can't get it to, I've got this little bar from Zoom that's covering up my slideshow option, and I don't know how to get rid of it.
If you go to slideshow and click on that.
Yeah, that's the problem, is I can't actually click on it
see it.
because the Zoom bar is covering it up for me right now.
You can access the Zoom bar to kind
I
of
believe
slide.
you can slide the Zoom bar over.
I can. Oh, okay. Do you do that? And oh, look, thank you. I
There you
knew
go.
that somebody who was better at Zoom than I am could figure this out for me. Let's see. All right, now I think we're cooking.
Yes.
Thank you.
Looks great.
Sorry about that. So thanks, Erin, for that great overview of what's going on at the Port of Portland. I will say that the Port of Portland is a true leader in the area of food waste reduction, so it was exciting to hear about their work. To kick us off this morning, I thought I would spend a little bit of time giving some background on why food waste is such an important priority for our state and why it's important for businesses. And first and foremost, we waste a lot of food. As much as 40% of all food grown or imported into the US for human consumption is never eaten. And that waste represents a huge loss of resources. Here are a couple of data points. Land use. If all of that wasted food were grown on one mega farm, that farm would occupy an area 3/4 of the size of the state of California. And the resources to grow food on that huge farm are extreme as well. For example, that farm would require all of the water used in Texas, California, and Ohio combined. And this doesn't even account for the energy that goes into the equipment to raise that food, the fertilizer production and use, pesticides, or even the impact of the pesticides and fertilizer on our environment. But let's talk more specifically about climate and greenhouse gas generation. If folks think about the greenhouse gas impact of food at all, most of the time they think about the greenhouse gases generated when we put that food waste in landfills. And that's certainly an important thing to worry about. If you look at this graph, you will see that for every ton of food put in a landfill, about a half ton of CO2 equivalent is generated, and that's pretty high. And we can eliminate this impact using composting and anaerobic digestion to keep food waste out of landfills. But what I really want you to pay attention to is the bar at the far right. That's the greenhouse gas reduction potential if we prevent food waste in the first place. And this is something like 6 to 7 times greater potential for reducing greenhouse gases than if we rely on anaerobic digestion and composting. So that was a national picture, but I want to talk a little bit about what is going on here in our own state. And I'm going to show you some data from Oregon's consumption-based emissions inventory. The consumption-based emissions inventory estimates the greenhouse gas generation that results from all of the stuff that we as Oregonians consume, regardless of where those products are produced. And This is a slightly different way of looking at emissions than the more traditional sector-based approach, which is what you typically hear about. So that's the emissions that are coming from cars and energy production in our state, and production that occurs in our state. But since greenhouse gases contribute equally to climate change, no matter where they're generated, in order to get a full picture of our climate impacts, we need to look at this more complete accounting. And when you do, you see right here on this graph that food actually is our second largest category of greenhouse gas emissions. And just like we saw in the national data in the previous slide, those emissions come primarily at the pre-purchase phase. That's that dark blue bar that you see circled here. The disposal impacts are in fact that tiny little green outlined bit at the right. So we have so that blue bar represents the opportunity Oregonians have to reduce greenhouse gases if we could be focused on prevention, which is where the Oregon DEQ is. We are in fact laser focused on prevention, and that's illustrated by this food waste hierarchy. This is our hierarchy where we have in fact increased the size of source reduction or prevention because we think it's that important. But unfortunately, a lot of attention gets paid to the lower portions of this hierarchy, and anaerobic digestion and composting, simply keeping food out of landfills, which is a good thing, but doesn't really represent the best potential for reducing greenhouse gases. Switching gears a little bit, I wanted to talk some about why businesses should care about food waste prevention. And one reason is that food service businesses actually account for a lot of our food waste, an estimated 40%, and that's almost as much as households. But in addition, there are some business benefits to reducing food waste. If you run a food service business, I don't need to tell you that food represents a huge chunk of your costs, an estimated 28 to 30% of all restaurant revenue. But what you might not realize is how much wasting that food may be costing you in wasted production inputs, the cost of that food itself, but also in the wasted labor and energy for preparing food that's ultimately thrown out that you may not even sell, either in your kitchen or then later by your customers. It's important for you all to realize that these costs can far exceed the costs that you most readily see, which is the costs of disposal, by as much as 10 to 20 times. But because they're hidden, they typically don't get a lot of attention. But because the costs of wasted food are so high to business, the opportunity to cut that waste and improve your bottom line is significant. Studies show that nearly all businesses that try to reduce their wasted food through implementing simple steps like literally measuring it so that you can identify what the problem is, employee training, and implementing waste prevention practices experienced a positive return on investment. In one study, over half of businesses actually had a return of more than 1,400%. That's a $14 return on every dollar invested. But a more conservative accounting, shown here in this slide, estimated a 7-to-1 return on food waste reduction investments. And I don't know any business that wouldn't want to achieve a 7-to-1 ROI on an investment. So reducing food waste can be important for your business and increase your bottom line. But there's still another reason why your business might want to reduce food waste. And that's because reducing food waste can help your business attract and retain customers. A 2017 study of US diners conducted by Unilever found that nearly 3/4 of them care about how restaurants handle food waste, and nearly half would be willing to spend more money at a business that is trying to reduce that waste. A Forbes magazine report recently told us that 87% of consumers, and now this is more generally about consumers and not focused on diners, have a more positive image of a company that supports social or environmental issues, and would be more loyal to a company that supports social or environmental issues. So I hope you're now convinced that preventing the wasting of food is a good thing for the food service industry. And I'm going to turn to talking briefly about how DEQ is trying to support efforts to prevent food waste in the food service industry. And I'm going to start with an important partnership that Oregon and Metro have with the Oregon Restaurant and Lodging Association that was initiated in 2018. As a result of that partnership, we have developed this program, Food Waste Stops With Me, that includes a website that houses materials that will help restaurants and hotels. And then also as a part of that program, we've hosted several live workshops. You see a photo of one here in pre-COVID times that helped restaurants develop plans for initiating efforts in their own kitchens. Now that COVID has changed life for us, we're pivoting to developing tools and other materials better tailored to the COVID and post-COVID world. So that's more online materials, more training in the form of brief, easy to digest videos, no pun intended. And we're particularly excited to be working right now with Metro and folks out there in Washington County to create some short videos that will provide information to businesses in easy to view pieces. And those initial videos include a planned one to cover how to measure and assess food and food waste in your kitchen so that you can identify ways to reduce it, and strategies for reducing front of house waste. A few years back, DEQ developed campaign resources that local governments can use to engage with food service businesses, and perhaps some of you have seen these resources. Our resources focus on the business case potential to increase your bottom line by reducing food waste. And our resources include not only this 2-page flyer that outlines that business case, but also postcards with mini case studies based on successes of real businesses in our state, and resource guides that provide links to more in-depth material about how you can reduce food waste in your business. These materials are all available in English, Spanish, Russian, and Vietnamese. And we also have a slide library, press releases, and social media collateral in case you want to take advantage of those. I want to move now to an exciting project that we're participating in on the West Coast. A lot of the traditional food waste work that's been done is highly intensive from a staff standpoint, one-on-one engagements with businesses and households. And so DEQ wondered how we might be able to find a way to scale up that work in ways that will make it more efficient for our region. And the place where we looked was the Pacific Coast Collaborative, which is an existing alliance of West Coast states, British Columbia, and our largest cities that have gotten together to work on climate change. And as part of that work, we have developed the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment. And the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment sets a goal for our region to reduce food waste by 50% by 2020. That's fairly consistent with most goals now, and is also consistent with our governor's executive order that was issued in 2020 that directs DEQ to reduce food waste by 50% by 2030. So as part of this commitment, we're currently engaging with grocers and brand manufacturers to reduce wasted food. The project brings these businesses together in a pre-competitive environment, and they identify their common waste challenges and try to come up with common approaches to solving those problems in their industry. We've already recruited several grocery chains, including important ones here in our state, Fred Meyer, Albertsons, Safeway, and New Seasons. Representatives from those businesses have already identified pilot projects that are underway and expected to show results early next year. Our future plans are to expand this work to include food processors and manufacturers, and ultimately the hospitality industry, so restaurants and hotels. And we already have Food Northwest, the leading food processing trade association in our region, signed on to work with the project. Our hope with this project is that the work will ultimately address institutional and systemic drivers of food waste in a way that will help us reduce waste in our state in an effective and efficient way. I did want to mention our new consumer campaign, just launched on October 1st. This campaign is based on extensive market research in Oregon and focuses on how households can stop wasting food by taking simple steps to reduce waste at home. But even though this is a consumer campaign, there are many ways that business can engage with this campaign as well. One of the things we found in our research leading up to this campaign is that consumers really would prefer to engage on food waste issues where they engage with food. And this is not surprising. At grocery stores where they're buying it, or at restaurants where they're ordering meals and eating it, or bringing in takeout. So we have developed some campaign collateral that we hope to distribute through food service businesses rather, in a way to get this material in front of consumers and get them to literally take it home in their takeout boxes or on reusable grocery bags and so forth. We're already in discussions with grocers, but leveraging our work with the PCC. And you'll recall the data that I talked about just a couple minutes ago about consumer attitudes. By demonstrating your commitment to reducing food waste, you can improve your relationship with your customers. And we would be happy to provide this kind of material to any businesses out there that want to use it. Finally, I just want to give you a flavor of where DEQ is going next with its food waste work. Over the nearly 6 years we've actively worked on food waste, we've come to appreciate the importance of understanding food systems in our state and how food systems act on food waste generation. So here are some early ideas that have come out of that research, and I'll just highlight a couple that I think may be of most interest. First is systems resilience. We've all seen too clearly during COVID and recent natural disasters that our food system is fragile. So one area that DEQ is looking at is how our efforts around food and food waste prevention can strengthen our larger food systems. We've also become very interested in localized efforts. So that's why I'm particularly happy to be here today talking to a local business group interested in local efforts that might include things like, composting, highly localized composting support to support local food production. And we're again considering how DEQ might support the development of these kinds of local businesses, especially in underserved areas. And then the final place that I'll just highlight is we're very interested in the role of source reduction, food waste prevention, as an adaptation response to climate change. I think we all know that climate change is going to have a pretty profound impact on the production of food. And so it may turn out that prevention is just an important way that we deal with a future of crop failures and more expensive food. And I'll just wrap up now by talking about our strategic planning process moving forward, because this represents also a shift from the way we've done things in the past. DEQ's first strategic plan for preventing the wasting of food was entirely internally created and focused heavily on exclusively on prevention. So going forward, we want to engage in a new process that will shift our focus a little bit. We're not moving away from prevention, but we are going to consider the full life cycle of food and take a more systems-based approach to our work. But importantly, and important for you all, is that we are anxious to actively engage partners and be more inclusive in the development of our projects going forward. And we want to make sure that we have representation from a wide range of people. And then finally, we want to foster collaborative partnerships and co-create with all of you the projects that we will be implementing over the next few years. And in creating those projects, we want to identify the ones where it makes most sense for DEQ to lead, but we also want to understand how we can participate and facilitate the work of others where that's the better path. And if you're interested in participating in this process, please do let me know. Finally, thanks for your attention this morning. And I'm really looking forward to the Q&A later in today's event. And I will stop sharing. There we go.
Thank you so much, Elaine. My name is Julian Potter. I'm with the City of Beaverton, and I am a business food waste and sustainability coordinator. And Elaine, that was such a great overview of the impacts of food and the wonderful resources that are available. And I encourage folks to also check out DEQ's website, because in addition to food waste, there are lots of great resources around waste prevention in general and recycling. I'm here to introduce my coworker, Kevin Boylan, who's the sustainability analyst at the city of Beaverton. And for the past year and a half, he has led efforts to coordinate the implementation of our city's climate action plan. Kevin, do you want to go ahead and pull up your screen while I'm introducing you?
Sure thing.
Okay. So Kevin enjoys working with people throughout the organization and community on a wide variety of climate-related topics. Prior to his current position, Kevin worked in the nonprofit sector on international development projects related to climate and resiliency. He also has experience in the agricultural and building sectors. He holds a Bachelor of Science in Construction Management and a Master of Science in Sustainable Resource Management. We feel so fortunate to have him at the city of Beaverton, and we're really happy that he could be here today. Take it away, Kevin.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Julian, for that introduction. Thank you, Elaine, for that great presentation. I hope everyone can see my screen okay. If not, just give me a shout. I'll try not to repeat too many of the same points that Elaine did, but I thank you all for your patience in advance if I do. I think a little bit of repeat is probably okay given the subject matter. Like Julian said, my name is Kevin, and I am the City of Beaverton's Sustainability Analyst. And this morning, I'm going to give an overview of the city's climate action plan, along with how food systems and food waste prevention play a role in meeting the city's climate goals, and also explore a few specific actions from the plan. But before all that, we're going to take a look at the role of food loss and waste play in greenhouse gas emissions, and therefore the role they play in setting climate action goals. So this picture here on the title slide I've chosen is not from Beaverton or even Oregon or the United States. This is a building that's in Milan, Italy. And I chose it because I think it's cool, because it's, you know, urban forestry on a whole new level. But mainly I think it's a visual reminder of what's possible to accomplish through collaboration. It's no easy feat to hang a tree off of a 20-story building, let alone getting all of the parties involved to agree that that's something that's even allowed, and then saying, you know what, we're gonna cover the whole building in it. But it's completely possible, as we can see from this picture. So it kind of becomes a bit of a visual metaphor for many things, including the hurdles and the status quo approaches that we'll have to overcome as we address the climate crisis. Milan, coincidentally, or maybe not surprisingly, also happens to be one of the cities leading the way on tackling food-related issues at the urban level. In addition to their Urban Food Policy Act, which I will post a link in the chat afterwards, they've also successfully established food waste hubs to collect produce from supermarkets and companies, along with donated food aid to give to local families in need. So just making them one of the many more peers we can learn from as we all look for solutions together. And so here are two more pictures. If we weren't on Zoom, maybe I'd ask for a show of hands or something for which one folks thinks caused more greenhouse gas emissions. Because of the topic today, I think we can all safely assume that the answer is the photo on the right. But it's definitely a stark contrast when you see it on the screen and you think about, you know, the emissions that you tend to think are associated with one thing, but more might come from another thing. Food waste in the United States results in more greenhouse gas emissions than the airline industry. And that is a lot of wasted food. And meanwhile, at the same time, close to 30 million Americans reported in the last census that they didn't have enough to eat in the previous week. So that presents an urgent call to action. As we heard earlier, and we'll no doubt hear and see again probably today, roughly a third of the world's food is never eaten. And as Elaine pointed out, that means fields plowed for no reason, fertilizer synthesized and applied, water pumped, goods and labor transported, energy produced and expended, all for naught, just to take food and dispose of it. And this squandering of resources generates greenhouse gases at every stage along the supply chain, including right up to methane released when organic matter winds up in the landfill. The food we waste is responsible for roughly 8% of global emissions. In the US alone, the production of lost or wasted food generates the equivalent of 33 million cars worth of greenhouse gas emissions. And so what does 33 million cars look like? How can we visualize that? Well, if you took all of the cars registered in the state of California, the most populous state, and doubled them, which is a dreadful thought, and then on top of that added all of the registered cars in Oregon, you'd have about 34 million cars. So an enormous impact to emissions from food waste and food loss and waste. This is a slide that I added kind of last minute, so it might not be in any printed materials if anyone's looking at those. I added it because of its relevance, and some of you may have seen an EPA report that was recently released on the environmental impacts of US wasted food. It has some truly staggering statistics that reflect the role of food loss and waste in meeting climate goals. I'm not going to read through each of them, but you can check them out there on the screen. All of it adds up to some conclusions that even if fossil fuel emissions were halted, the current trends in the food system would prevent the achievement of the Paris Accords 1.5 degrees Celsius goal. Between the lines, it also points out that addressing food loss and waste is an opportunity to address many more of the puzzle pieces in the climate crisis, from water and energy to equity and food security. The report notes that the bulk of environmental benefits could be achieved by halving food loss and waste in only 3 sectors: households, restaurant, and food processing, and that focusing on the most resource-intensive foods, such as animal products and fruits and vegetables, can yield the greatest environmental benefit. One of the stats that particularly stuck out to me was that last one on the bottom of the screen, that food loss and waste results in enough calories to feed more than 150 million people each year. Zooming in a little bit, I like to show this slide as a reminder of where emissions come from locally. This shows where they originate in Beaverton. This was from a greenhouse gas emissions inventory completed as part of the development of the Beaverton Climate Action Plan several years ago. As we heard from Elaine earlier, reinforced here, you can see that food, which is the gold bar to the left, is the second largest contributor, second only to vehicles. So you can see just how big of a contributor it is. And all of these emissions are all responsible for the challenges that we're dealing with. In recognition of Beaverton's contributions to climate change, that was part of the impetus behind the development of the Beaverton Climate Action Plan, which I might refer to as the BCAP because that's what we call it. So that, along with the growing recognition of the position that cities and businesses are in to lead on climate action. Cities are now home to more than half of the world's population and contribute 70% of global emissions. So they're a good place to start when we're looking to solve these types of problems. Beaverton began developing its climate action plan way back in 2016, and then was later adopted in 2019. The plan will be in place until 2023, when it will be revised and updated. So The plan has two overarching goals, a community goal and a city operations goal. The community goal being 100% reduction of community greenhouse gas emissions by 2050, and a city operations goal of carbon neutral city operations by 2035. Neither of these goals can be achieved in isolation, and they require the support, innovation, and persistence of partners, businesses, and residents. The entire BCAP framework includes 86 actions distributed across 5 framework areas shown here, with the number of actions in each listed down the middle. The 5 areas are consumer choice and waste, buildings, energy, and urban form, transportation, natural systems, and community well-being. Food and food waste may not be explicitly called out in each of these chapters, but the connections are really unavoidable. So I've gone ahead here and noted some of the more obvious connections. In the consumer choice and waste chapter, this mainly ties to consumption and disposal, buildings and energy. Buildings are where food is stored, prepared, and eaten. So there we can draw lines around refrigeration, energy efficiency, energy use. Transportation, unless you're growing it in your backyard, it's all coming from somewhere and needs to get to where it's going. And then natural systems. Here we see an overlap with land use and water use. Moving water from place to place tends to use a lot of energy and therefore can result in a lot of emissions. And then community well-being. This is where we can tie to adaptive actions, health, resiliency, and food security. More specifically, food waste and loss is in some way or another called out on its own at several points within the plan. So I just wanted to run through these 5 examples. The first is expanding participation in residential food scraps program. This action includes education and outreach around food scraps collection via single family yard and food waste collection bins, and future efforts to solve the problem around food scraps collection at multifamily properties, which would also include outreach, resources, and technical assistance to property managers and residents. Next is reducing residential and business wasted food. This is done through the promotion of the Eat Smart, Waste Less campaign, and now DEQ's new Bad Apples campaign, which I think is just fantastic. Those little videos and clips and graphics are quite cheeky. And then through the promotion of capacity building resources for businesses as part of the Food Waste Stops With Me initiative. Also in the plan is increasing business participation in food donation and food scraps collection, which includes working with local businesses to help set them up for compliance for the upcoming food scrap separation requirements. Next, we have prioritization of high impact items. This is kind of a broad and overlapping action, but I mention it here because it specifically calls out efforts to focus on food, which is reflective of the high impact of food waste on emissions. And then finally, we have expanding local food security and emergency distribution for vulnerable populations. This is much more of an adaptive and resiliency action than it is about limiting emissions. And currently this occurs by working closely with organizations such as Waste Not Food Taxi, the Oregon Food Bank, and others to increase donations by connecting them with local stores and institutions where edible food would have otherwise gone to waste. As part of this action, the city has also worked with Waste Not Food Taxi to provide a social services grant and a van for donation for their work. And city staff under this action are also members of Washington County's Food Access and Essential Needs Task Force for BIPOC communities, which is a group that is working to identify opportunities to increase culturally relevant and healthy foods to Beaverton's community members that are disproportionately affected by food scarcity, especially during emergency events related to the impacts from climate change. So The details in all of these actions are not exhaustive, and this is just kind of a sampling of the work that's been occurring under them. But we're continuing to look for new opportunities to expand on them, and we'll continue to be doing that in the coming years. I could go on and talk about all of the different emissions pathways, and while those are all relevant to the individual actions themselves, I kind of just wanted to boil it down to these 3 points that the actions focus on, which is reducing food waste via responsible consumption, keeping food scraps out of the landfill, and ensuring that food that is produced makes it into the hands of those who need it. The point of all of this, I guess, is really just to show how big a piece food is in this puzzle, because I think the consumer might tend to overlook that sometimes, right? Not all of us will drive somewhere today, especially during the pandemic. Some of us might only make it to the other side of the house. Some of us might not turn on a stove, or if it's as warm out as it was yesterday, we might not even turn on our heat. But we're all going to eat something. And making food is one of the biggest parts of our lives as a household, as a community, and as a society. And because of that, it has this outsized impact on everything that it relates to: culture, economics, health, and especially the environment. Because before it gets to us, it all comes from somewhere else, right? Hopefully, maybe it's a farm down the road, maybe it's somewhere a lot further away. Maybe it's someday a lab somewhere, and it'll still need to get to us. This morning, as we're all trying to stay awake while people share statistics with us, maybe it's something that used to be a forest somewhere in West Africa or Brazil. But the main point is that the more we waste of it, the more unnecessary production is supported, and the more we emit, and around we go. But this ever-presence of food in our lives and all its emissions really lets it become key to addressing the issues, because its scale also provides this opportunity. There's chances at every step in the process, multiple times a day, to change the way that we do things. And all of us, as businesses, as organizations involved in food, which we all are in some way, we have the opportunity to do that. So thank you so much for your time. And if you'd like to learn more about the City of Beaverton's climate action work or the climate action plan and how businesses can be a greater part of it, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kevin. That was great. Nina Carlson from Northwest Natural is going to jump on next and introduce our next speaker.
Hi there. We are really pleased to be able to support and sponsor this great event. We really do believe in kind of a lot of what Kevin was saying. Is we believe in using as little as we can and using it as most efficiently as we can. And we're proud to let folks know that as your natural gas supplier and energy provider, we have a vision of carbon neutrality by 2050, and you can learn more by looking at our website at lesswecan.com. And with that, Kevin teed it up beautifully for me to introduce Susie Snortum from Waste Not Food Taxi. Susie was a chef and caterer in Silicon Valley, and in doing so, she really started to recognize barriers in prepared food donations, and she started Waste Not Food Taxi in 2015 in response to the logistics of getting excess food to people who need it. Her organization volunteered 2020 when she partnered with the Oregon Food Bank, and now they are currently transporting up to 5 tons of perishable food each week to local low-income homes, underserved households, various places of people who can really need that. She lives in unincorporated Washington County with her musician husband. She has 2 married grandchildren, and since handing off the day-to-day operations to a new director, she has really been able to focus more on writing and cooking and envisioning more ways of streamlining and our food delivery and making sure that folks have the food they need. So with that, I invite everyone to listen up to Susie. And Susie, why don't you share your screen? Thank you guys very much for your time here today.
Oh, goodness. Okay, there we go. Too many things open. Slideshow. There we go. Can you all see the screen okay?
Yes, Susie, thank you.
All
That's
right.
great.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Susie Snortum, founder of Waste Not Food Taxi. I was a chef caterer in my early career and then a small business consultant. I've been working for nonprofits since the turn of the century, and I always wanted to start one myself to address food waste and hunger relief. Just this year, we hired an actual employee, so I'm more of a figurehead, and I'm delighted to welcome Chris Abosamra as our Director of Operations. We started in 2015. I had the idea, a lot of people do this. I had the idea of selling baked goods to raise money for hunger relief. So we started benefit brownies and we sold at farmers markets and Portland Saturday Market, that kind of thing. I don't know what I was thinking. I just didn't know. Baked goods are a huge part of the problem. Plastic packaging is a close second. So I was really contributing more to the problem than I was helping anybody. I started hearing about the shortage of people distributing leftover food, how businesses were throwing a lot of their excess in the trash. I started researching the impacts of food waste on our environment, not to mention the irony of being such a wealthy society with massive poverty and hunger. It didn't take long to realize that the problem wasn't a lack of food, it was all logistics. So we ditched the brownies and started approaching food businesses about picking up their leftovers. Volunteers drive their own cars to pick up donations in their own neighborhoods and deliver to the nearest partner pantries, minimizing transportation time for already aging fresh food. Green teams at schools are a powerful force. Several asked me to work with them on reducing cafeteria food waste. And I had the good fortune to meet Valerie Bako from Beaverton School District. She has set up a comprehensive food donation program through the whole district. It was just lacking a leader and enough volunteers. So we, Waste Not Food Taxi, jumped on that. And we've been working with the school district since 2016, picking up donations from 50 schools every week. It was a match made in heaven because they already had all the policies, procedures, standards. It was a package made for us. So we're greatly appreciative. In addition to prepared food, most existing programs aren't able to use all the bakery products being donated. We started setting them out in my driveway for people to help themselves. I stewed over the problem of excessive amounts of bread and the driveway and prepared food programs. We got secondhand refrigerators. We got a tent, then a bigger tent, then more refrigerators. Still food was going to waste and people were going hungry. After about 3 years redistributing, redistributing food and working really long hours and failing to establish a revenue source, Julaine Potter at Beaverton's solid waste and recycling program gave my name to a funding committee at the city. Julaine and Jennifer Stefanik have been two of the most supportive people, and our success is primarily due to them, their generosity, and their networking resources. Beaverton gave us a grant. The plan was that I could quit my day job and draw a salary or that I could hire someone to run the fast growing charity. I write when I go to bed at night because I have to get thoughts out of my head before I can go to sleep. It used to look something like this. There's too much bread. What can we do? How can we reduce bread production? Is there any way to recycle all this bread? I've looked at a lot of different scenarios. Probably the most useful one is don't put the bread in the landfill. Whatever you do, at least we can grind it up into breadcrumbs and put it in the soil, put it in the potting mix, put it in the garden, something. It won't hurt the land, and that will keep it from generating methane emissions. So that's where I am with bread right now. I was a pastry chef. Maybe my future involves reducing baking. We'll see. Okay, we had to change a lot. We had the driveway pantry. It got bigger, we got a tent. It got bigger, we got refrigerators. It kept getting bigger. I still have stuff in my driveway, but we've moved on to other bigger, better things. That grant from the city of Beaverton was dispersed right after the pandemic hit. So rather than hiring somebody or paying myself a salary, we started renting a truck every Friday and filling it with leftover Farmers to Families boxes and distributing them in low-income neighborhoods and at low-income apartment complexes, trying to maximize the food getting directly to people who were unable to get to the pantries that are already in existence. We were redirecting about 500 sets of food boxes every week. These are the leftover food boxes after other charities had already distributed them. So they would have ended up in the landfills. That Beaverton grant paid for most of the truck rental, and I continued to work for a church and trade for donations to keep the charity rolling. We started working with Oregon Food Bank and became kind of a hybrid partner. The school district I already mentioned, City of Beaverton, Oregon Food Bank. We aren't a partner in that they provide food to us. We're a partner in that we work with their staff to ensure that food is getting where it's needed. Washington County, of course, and Jennifer in particular have been huge supporters, and we're so grateful for that partnership. And Metro has made a little nod in our direction, and hopefully we'll work more closely with Metro in the future. Right now, we're concentrated on Washington County. And we also work with Food Rescue US, which provides an app so that we can schedule drivers and pickups and deliveries during the appropriate hours for both donors and recipient pantry. Jennifer and Julaine were instrumental in getting the county to call me about CARES Act funds. And I just got an email one day asking, would a refrigerated truck be useful to help us reach more people? Are you kidding? So we call her Betty White, little refrigerated truck with CARES Act funds. It was purchased by Ride Connection. The county also provided us with 10 large commercial refrigerators and 10 small chest freezers, which we were able to put into low-income housing buildings directly so that we can provide them with food and they have safe storage. We drive around and meet a lot of kids who are thrilled to get, it's not just sweets and things that are bad for them. These kids were thrilled to get these beef sticks that were donated. And it's fun to see young people in particular finding something healthy and being excited about it. We were also able to start a community garden in my front yard. So we have volunteers stop by whenever they like. They don't have to access the backyard, and that produced quite a bit of food this season to supplement the fresh produce that we provide to low-income housing. We're doing the on-site pantries. Here's a picture of one at an apartment complex in Beaverton. They allow us to keep the refrigerator and freezer there full time, but the pantry is in the community room only on Sundays when nobody else is using it. So sometimes we have to cancel using that room if there's an event. But you can see a huge amount of food in this building, and about 100 families a week take advantage of the on-site pantry. They don't have to drive anywhere. Many of them don't have cars. There are a lot of disabled folks. Some of them require that we put a box together and walk it over to their apartment, which we're happy to do. You can see in this last picture on the right, that whole table is covered with bread products, and then all these boxes in the center are bread products as well. There's a huge amount of bakery. So we're building more of those. And when the apartments don't have a room we can use, we just go outside. We use the truck and some folding tables and less of the refrigerated food like frozen meat. We tend not to be able to distribute this way due to temperature control. But we can hand out a lot of food off of our refrigerated truck. And the produce in particular is really deeply appreciated. I have to acknowledge our volunteers, our drivers, the pantry volunteers. This gentleman is Larry. He's in his 70s. He's there every Sunday, and he unloads the truck and sets up the pantry and helps people and cleans up and mops the floor. He does everything. But it takes a lot of people organizing the food, transporting the food, meeting the clients, working with the clients in their own language so that they can access other essential services like healthcare. We're really trying to network with all those services to make sure that our underserved communities know what they are entitled to and are able to access those services. I told you about my bedside table writing. It's gotten worse. So now I've been working on this comprehensive food security plan. What if we had procedures written out for these pantries? And what if we had job descriptions for people who run them? And what if we, standardize notices to all the pantries? And what if we have a budget? And what if we create a comprehensive food security plan that would ensure that everybody in Washington County can get food? So I've been working with the Food Access Network and the Food Access and Essential Needs work team on these kinds of projects, which takes me a little bit away from food waste directly, but it's a huge need brought up by the pandemic and hyper-focused right now. So I'm excited about the possibilities with that. And down the road, maybe I'll work on that bakery excess, see if I can figure out a way to get baked goods back into the soil. I really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you so much, Susie. That was fantastic, as always. I want to bring on Troy Gagliano from PGE. Troy, are you out there? And
yeah, can you hear me okay?
yes, we can hear you. Thanks for jumping in.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Jennifer. And hi, everybody. Troy Gagliano with PGE. I'm on the local government affairs team. I cover Washington and Columbia counties. Excuse me. So just delighted to be here and sponsor this symposium again. And so just a couple quick words on some things PGE is up to before we introduce the next set of speakers. So carbon, of course, is a major theme of what we're talking about today. So just wanted to share a few things about some specific decarbonization ways we're reducing CO2 emissions in the future at PGE. One big one is that from the last legislative session, House Bill 2021 has us reducing carbon in the power we deliver to customers, 80% reduction in carbon by 2030, up to 100% reduction by 2040. That's by more renewables on the grid, electrification of our fleet, more energy efficiency measures, all that whole range of things. We're also working with partners like Kevin in Beaverton here. I think Peter Brandom is with us today in Hillsborough. And we're helping cities with their desire to purchase more renewables and specifically to put new renewable energy in the ground. So our partners here in Hillsborough, Beaverton, Washington County are among several who are participating in the construction of a brand new 160 megawatt solar project in Gillum County, Northeast Oregon. That's going to be online about Q2. So cities can point to that and say, hey, but for our investment, that those new carbon-free electrons would not be on the grid. So that's pretty remarkable. And we thank our partners for helping us create that and making that so. And then finally, electric vehicles are a big part of this. We got about 40% of the carbon coming from our society comes from transportation. It used to be power plants like us, but the things we're doing are bringing us down. So electric vehicles, we're doing a lot. We've helped school districts get 7 different electric school buses throughout PGE service territory. 4 of those are in the Beaverton School District. And we also have different programs like business charging rebates for EV chargers in public spots, workplaces, and multifamily buildings. And then we also have a fleet partner program where we can help municipalities, transit districts, TriMet school districts, nonprofits with their efforts to switch over to more electric, cleaner vehicles. So a lot going on. And if you have any questions, most of that, all that stuff is on our website. There's a lot. So if you need any help navigating it, feel free to reach out to me. So thanks again for the time and the opportunity. So just next up with us, we have several waste reduction specialists from Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling and City of Beaverton, Community Services and Engagement. And they're going to share some information about upcoming regional business food scraps requirements and what you need to know for your food generating business. So thanks again, everybody. Appreciate the chance.
Thank you, Troy. And thanks, a really big thanks to the sponsors, PGE, Northwest Natural, Port of Portland, and Epson. And thank you to all the presenters. There's been such an amazing amount of information shared today. And I'm very glad that we're recording it, and we will be sharing all of this with all of you who are in the audience and the presentations and as much information as we can. So, okay, so we've got one more presentation and then we can get to some Q&A. So I'll try not to blaze through this too quickly. So yeah, just a reminder, I can see folks are using the Q&A in the chat. If you have questions, please get those in the Q&A. And so, yeah, thanks for sticking around. We've got about 22 minutes here left. And so without further ado, my name is Jennifer Stefanik, Green Business Coordinator for Washington County Solid Waste and Recycling. And I'll be kicking off the presentation today, and then I'll have my colleagues from Washington County, Noemi and Kate will round out the presentation. And also want to mention joining us today and throughout this whole planning process for this event have been Elizabeth Cole and Julaine Potter from City of Beaverton. So really appreciate you both supporting this. And I'm just really happy that we're talking about this countywide. And it's just, again, just been an amazing amount of information shared. So let's get rolling here. Okay, so here's a brief overview of what this quick presentation will be about. So we'll be sharing some background information on the business food scraps requirement and the timeline. And then we'll share what types of businesses that will be subject to this mandate. We'll also share which kinds of foods can go into the food scraps collection and talk about free resources and assistance, staff trainings we can help we can provide for your business, and just to really get you set up with a successful food scraps program. And then we will end by sharing many businesses around the county that have been participating for quite some time. So get right into it. So the background and timeline. Food is the single largest portion of our garbage, really enough to fill 5,000 long haul trucks bound for landfill every year. As food decomposes in landfills, it creates methane, a powerful contributor to climate change. So obviously much of the information that was already shared today. I will be reiterating very little of it, but so for about 15 years, Metro and local communities have taken the steps to prevent food waste and keep food scraps out of the landfills and put them to better use. And today, food scraps from participating restaurants, grocery stores, and other businesses across the region are converted to compost at facilities near Salem and Corvallis. And then in July of 2018, Metro created a policy requiring the largest food service businesses to separate their food scraps from other garbage. And that policy is expanding to the entire Metro region. And that will start with the largest generators of food waste, such as grocery stores and restaurants. And during that initial phase, that'll be during the initial phase of next year, March of 2022. But fortunately, many have already started participating, as I mentioned, and that's been going on for several years. And again, we'll share some examples. Future timelines for other smaller businesses that generate less will be required to implement this policy later in 2023 and 2024. So between now and then, our teams from both Washington County and the city of Beaverton, we're ready to help you plan and train your staff and provide free assistance in setting up successful food scraps collection programs. So what types of businesses will be required to implement this upcoming mandate? Well, as you can see here, it's quite a list. It focuses only on businesses and organizations that process, cook, or sell food and generate large quantities of food scraps. So that means limited and full service restaurants, bars, cafeterias, grocery stores, warehouse stores and markets, food manufacturers, and processors. It also includes hospitals, hotels, nursing homes, colleges and universities, K-12 schools, catering companies, and corporate cafeterias. It doesn't apply to businesses outside of the food industry, such as convenience stores or to households. So again, please contact Washington County staff, myself and my colleagues, and City of Beaverton staff with questions about whether your business will be required to implement the business food scraps requirement. So what exactly can go in the food scraps collection? Basically all food scraps, including raw and cooked meat, bones, dairy, fruit and vegetable trimmings, grains, all types of cooked foods, spoiled food, plate leftovers, tea and coffee grounds. All of these can go in the bin. And what doesn't go in? Well, basically no other item. It's only food only. No oils, fats, or grease, no liquids, no napkins, pizza boxes, to-go or takeout containers, no compostable or biodegradable products, even if it's listed on the packaging. No utensils, gloves, straws, parchment paper, twist ties, or other types of garbage are allowed. Really trying to drive that food only home, that food only messaging home. And hopefully it's not whole foods. Hopefully it's all eaten foods. As you can see on this image, there's a fair amount of uneaten food, but we really want to try to represent as much as possible. So there's a few exceptions. The only other items that are allowed to go in are Biodegradable Products Institute certified compostable liner bags. So that bag you see on the left. Coffee filters and tea bags. And so these liner bags are not required for you to use in your food scraps collection setup, but they are helpful, and they can keep your containers clean and just make it easier to empty the bins internally, and just makes the whole process a bit cleaner. And you can find these compostable liners at many local restaurant supply stores and with your food service purveyors. You can also check in with us at Washington County and City of Beaverton where to access these bags. So now I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Noemi, to share about how we can assist your business. So Noemi.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I'm Noemi, and I'm the bilingual outreach specialist with the Green Business team in Washington County. And part of the requirement includes the posting and signage that must go in the container so that your staff know what is accepted in the composting or food bins. And these resources are part of the resources that we provide for free, such as posters, stickers, and food scrap collection bins, as the ones that you can see there. We also help set up a successful food scrap collection program at your business. And we can also provide personalized staff training. Work one-on-one with key staff to help them become the point person within your business. And all of these services currently are offered both in Spanish and in English, as well as in materials. And this is based on your business preferences and needs. And now I will pass it on to my colleague, Kate.
Thanks, Noemi. So what you see on your screen is just an example of the many businesses that we provide technical assistance to. We support everyone from Intel and Starbucks, Tualatin Riverkeepers, Community Action, Adelante Mujeres. We also work with universities, schools, small local restaurants, and even two-person house cleaning companies. And we really look forward to continuing this work and growing our program to offer equitable services to all businesses and organizations throughout the county. And we would love to connect with your business. Over the last few years, our team has been very effective at setting up successful voluntary food scraps collection programs at about 300 businesses and about 50% of the schools in the county. So separating food scraps from garbage is the first step in the food waste prevention journey, because when you separate your food scraps, the waste becomes more visible and you can understand the causes and the sources of this waste, and then ultimately create strategies to reduce it. And our team can help with that using the Food Waste Stops With Me tools that Elaine and Kevin mentioned earlier in their presentations. So we're going to wrap up this part of the presentation today by sharing a short video about Embassy Suites in Washington Square, their composting and food waste prevention efforts, and the great results that they've had due to their hard work and their commitment to reduce food waste.
I'm Scott Youngblood. I'm the general manager at the Embassy Suites by Hilton, Portland, Washington Square. We realized that there was an immense amount of food waste leaving the hotel. We knew that the expense of waste removal was greater than it needed to be. We knew that we weren't performing as the kind of corporate citizens, the business partners that we wanted to be. And so the opportunity to reduce food waste seemed intuitive, but we really didn't know where to start.
The process to get Embassy Suites started on this food waste journey was starting them with composting. So came in, started talking with Scott about composting, separating their food waste, and they were on board from the get-go.
One of the first things we did with Washington County, got some big tarps and took all our food scraps from that day and laid them out and, raked through it, just to say, hey, what's in here? Is there something we could do differently? Is there something maybe we could buy pre-prep that it might be better if we're not able to utilize those scraps? A hotel this size, it could be up to 200 pounds of food waste a day, which is, pretty significant.
We began learning about purchasing and sourcing food in a more sensible and sustainable way, the manner in which we are preparing food, the manner in which we're cross-utilizing products by preventing food waste in the first place, and then separating the food waste that is inevitable. It's actually saved us thousands of dollars a month just in utility expenses.
Oregon's unique in that, we have so many great products, from hazelnuts to wine grapes to Dungeness crab. And we need to be stewards of the environment and take care of all those things and make sure they're available for generations to come.
We've taken a number of steps to reduce waste during our buffet presentation in the morning.
We portion bacon out. We have a bacon ambassador for breakfast that hands out 2 strips of bacon. You're welcome to come back for more.
We've always used a full-size 10-inch dinner plate, and simply reducing the size of that plate to an 8-inch plate has given guests an opportunity to select less food to begin with, and in all likelihood, consume less food. We expected some feedback, both positive and negative, from our guests, We were surprised to find out there was no feedback. It went completely unnoticed. However, the waste that we were generating post-service went down by 50%, and it was surprising to all of us. For businesses who want to get started down this path, my best recommendation is to visit foodwastestopswithme.org, find your local partners, and simply begin the process.
All right, so as we're wrapping up this part of the presentation, I just wanted to share some of our contact information. So if your business is located in Beaverton, you can reach out to the City of Beaverton team. And then all other businesses in Washington County can reach out to our team. The contact info is up on the screen, and I'll also be sharing it in the chat in a moment. If you're joining today and your business is outside of Washington County, know that all other jurisdictions in the metro area are offering similar services. And so if you don't know where to start, you can look at the Food Waste Stops With Me website, and there's contacts for all those other jurisdictions, or feel free to reach out to our team and we can point you in the right direction. And with that, it's time for Q&A. So if you haven't yet, you can put your questions in the Q&A, or if you want to ask your question verbally, you can request to be unmuted, and then we can go ahead and help with that. And so as we're kind of waiting, oh,
saw a question in the chat earlier from Molly.
Yeah, thank you. I saw that as well. So I know it was sent just to the hosts and panelists, so I wanted to kind of elevate it here. She asked, is there a potential to reduce the amount of food waste in grocery stores by encouraging the use of a lot of online food shopping at grocery stores? The idea being that people can order food in advance and grocery stores can ship as needed, kind of like a just-in-time model. So I don't know if Elaine, you have anything maybe that you could speak to that?
Yes, that was an excellent question and demonstrates that great minds think alike. I mentioned this regional project that we're involved in, the Pacific Coast Food Waste Commitment. And as part of that project, our grocer participants have already identified online ordering as a possible way, an avenue for reducing food waste in a variety of ways, not just the ways that Molly listed, but also as ways to help them better track and order their food to keep up with this online ordering. And then we're also interested and are working with our grocers to use online ordering as a channel for delivering food waste prevention material to consumers.
Awesome. Thanks, Elaine. And kind of as a follow-up, you did mention other pilot projects that the collaborative is working on. Can you share any hints about those, or
yes,
not sure if that's public yet?
So this is all sort of, it's still in its early phases, but one other pilot project that we're currently pursuing is to test some new apps that one of them is called Spoiler Alert, and I can't remember what the other one is, but these are our apps that and services that basically take food ordering and give it to a third party that then keeps close track of how fresh produce in particular is being sold, and then supplies in a just-in-time way produce to grocery stores as needed. The apps actually take responsibility for all of the food waste, which they hope isn't generated. But the app allows what we hope it will allow is for better distribution, basically. So this third party has the produce, and it just sends it to the right place at the right time.
Awesome. That sounds like that would be great. And so, Susie, I had a question for you, kind of about an app as well. I saw that you mentioned the Food Rescue US app. So if a business or pantry wanted to connect with your organization, is that the best way that they could get in touch with you, or is there a better approach?
That is a way that they could get in touch with us. It's probably better to go to our website, wastenotfoodtaxi.org. And there is a comment form where you can put in contact information, and Chris, our new director, will get in touch. And our phone number is all over the website. we encourage people to call, especially if there's an immediate need for a pickup of a donation. We don't necessarily have drivers on call all the time. So the sooner somebody actually connects with our staff or one of our volunteers, the faster that pickup will happen.
Awesome. Thank you. And now I wanted to give space to see if anybody else has any questions. Or any of the panelists. Oh, Noemi?
Sorry, I also have a question for Susie. Do you currently pick up food from only big vendors or smaller vendors as well, such as like a market, like a Saturday market? And can it be prepped food already, other than the baked goods?
It varies depending on how close a driver is to where the food needs to be picked up. Some drivers are willing to pick up 50 pounds or less. If it's 2 cakes, we probably would say we're not able to do that. We just don't have the manpower, and it's not worth the gas to travel somewhere to pick up a very small donation. But the schools, for example, often have 30 to 50 pounds per school per week. Sometimes they have hundreds. But because we have parents mostly in the neighborhood of each school picking up and taking to the nearest pantry, they're already going to school to pick up their kids. That makes the transportation worth collecting the donation. But every single situation is a juggling act to see whether it's cost effective, energy effective, that sort of thing. And we keep all our volunteers and anybody working with the public, we keep them informed and up to date with programs that are using food, so that if, like, I get calls from neighbors saying, can I bring you my leftover, we had a birthday, can I bring the cake? No, you can't bring it to my house. No, we're not going to pick it up, but here's somebody who can use it. This veterans hall is having a lunch and they would love an extra cake, or really trying to know what's going on locally. And I think that we need multiple volunteers in each zip code to be able to field those calls, and hopefully we'll have more phones at some point. There was something else that I wanted to tell you. Shoot, what was it? We have people deliver donations to Rock Creek Church Pantry, which is near where I live, so that it doesn't come to my driveway anymore. Because of the pandemic, we're not handling any opened food or prepared food that's not packaged. We did have a team of volunteers repackaging and labeling and sending things to pantries, but as long as there's a pandemic issue, we're going to forego that part of it for now.
Awesome. Thank you, Susie. And I saw another question come in. It says, are there any good zero waste cooking resources for a residential audience that anybody can share? So I don't know if Elaine or Kevin, you have any input on that?
I'll just jump in with one, but I'm sure there are, actually, I know that there are lots of resources out there. Actually, there's a lot of interest in how households can reduce food waste. And I would encourage folks to maybe start with EPA's Food Too Good to Waste material, because they provide a lot of resources on a variety of ways that you can reduce food waste in your home. You can check out our don'tletgoodfoodgobad.org website, although the resources we have there are mainly focused on really simple steps for reducing food waste in your home, and wouldn't provide so much information about zero waste cooking.
Awesome. All right. Well, with that, I think we're just about done for the day. There are tons of great resources and contact information in the chat, so I would encourage everybody to take a look at that before you sign off. And now I'm going to pass it back over to Sarah from the chamber to wrap us up.
Thank you, Kate. Thank you, everyone, again, our panelists, our presenters, Thank you to Jen, Kate, Naomi for all the support from Washington County, City of Beaverton. And again, one more time, just thanking our presenting sponsor today, Port of Portland, our supporting sponsors, Northwest Natural and PGE, and our energy drink sponsor, Epson. I am happy that all of you guys got such great information today, and we're happy for you to be here today. Have a great rest of your week, and we hope to see you all soon.
Thanks, everybody.